Good morning. So you join me down at one of the ponds here, having just fed and read oxygen. It's about 6 o'clock, so I like to get down here early and check oxygen and give them a feed. And there were conditions the last couple of weeks really, with it being overcast, windy and rainy. It's actually pretty good conditions for the fish. Obviously they're cold-blooded, so they love consistency. And it's been pretty overcast, so you've not really got that UV strength to really trigger a significant photosynthesis and oxygen peaks and troughs. So oxygen's been pretty consistent the last few weeks, and you've got the breeze, so the temperature's been pretty consistent. So the fish, yeah, they seem to thrive on consistency, being a cold-blooded species. So they've been pretty ravenous. Every time I pull up with a feed bucket, the surface of the water starts to wobble, so the fish are very keen for the food at the moment. You've probably seen them the same across your fisheries as well, with the catch rates. I'd imagine have been pretty consistent the last few weeks. Now the reason for this video has been one that I've been meaning to record for a long time, and it's really something that I've been asked ever since I started the business. Every year I've been asked the same questions from different people about feeding boilies as a supplementary food source to fisheries. And the reason I've not ever done them and not really entertained it, obviously I could sell it pretty easily. I've got the market there and people are asking for it, but the reason I've not done it is because I can't honestly say that I'd recommend feeding boilies. For starters, it's not a cost-effective option to feed into fisheries. It's not a cost-effective food source. Even the most affordable boilies you might be able to get made for you, you're talking probably 2 or 3, perhaps more likely £4 per kilo. So that's, you know, between 2 and 4 grand a tonne, which is a lot more than what you can spend on the highest spec pellet diets. You know, even the top spec pellet diets, you don't want to be spending more than £1 a tonne really. So you're not going to get 2 or 3 times the benefit feeding a boilie. So for me, it's just not cost effective. You can't make boilies cost effectively. If you're going to be spending 2 or 3 more times than you have to on a boilie, then we want to be getting 2 or 3 times the benefit really, and 2 or 3 times the results. So that's just not realistic. You're not going to get that. I know boilies, you can put what you like in them. You can put immune boosters in them. You can make them as palatable as you like. It's a nice dense food source. The fish love eating them, but it's just not cost effective, for one. And if you want to put a lot of immune boosting and health beneficial things in there, really I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think to really boost the immunity and health of your fish, there's much healthier things you can do in the winter by stock correction and feeding a sustainable food source, something that's beneficial to the fish that they want to eat and that's not going to harm water quality. And that's the other thing with boilies, is that they don't break down as efficiently as a pelleted feed would. And that's important really, because if they're not breaking down, then the feeds start to turn rancid. And after, you know, might only be a couple of days that the fish go off the feed, and that does happen. Fish can go off the feed for a day or 2, especially if they've been caught, or if the water quality's a bit up and down, oxygen's a bit hit and miss. You know, they can quite easily go off the feed for a couple of days, and any boilie you're putting in, any boilie that's gone in over those couple of days, it's just going to turn rancid on the bottom. So, and that's, for me, the fish aren't going to eat that then. Once it's turned rancid, they'll see that food item as a rancid food source. It's on the lake bed, so they start to see the lake bed as a rancid place to go. It becomes a rancid environment, so they go off feeding. They go off feeding off the bottom. They see these round boilies on the bottom. They think that's a rancid food source. So it's actually affecting the fishing as well. If you get rancid feed on the bottom and it's rancid boilies, and they start to associate that with a nasty thing to eat. So yeah, for me, that's another reason why. Not only that, we see it every winter. A lot of places we go, a lot of fisheries that we go to, and we do the fishery, the population work, the fishery management, stock surveys and stuff. And we go to a lot of fisheries that feed supplementary boilies, and we were bringing the nets in, and you can tell, you don't even have to ask them if they're feeding a boilie, because you can see these slicks coming up. Oil slicks a lot of the time if they're feeding a particularly fatty or you know, fish meal sort of based boilie, and when you bring the lead lines in, it just stinks. Even for us, we're not even in the water, and we can smell it. You know, the rancid sort of smells coming off of those boilies when you bring these lead lines in, and you got boilies rolling up in the net, and it just stinks. And you can imagine if we can smell that. Carp are a lot more sensitive to smell and taste than we are, so that must be a horrible environment for them. And I think really looking at that, you're actually reversing all the processes that we want. We want to encourage fish to feed. We want them to be searching the substrate, be grazing the substrate, sucking and blowing the substrate to keep it active, keep the the silt mobile and keep oxygen in the silt to help it break down and create a fertile environment. And if you've got rancid food on the lake bed, it's not a nice environment for them, so they're going to be stressing. So with that said, with a fast breakdown feed, if any feed that's not eaten, with it breaking down fast, you've got water and oxygen working through that mix, and as the particles become suspended, it goes into the food chain much quicker, so the breakdown process is much more efficient, getting oxygen into that mix and getting the bacterial process, breaking everything down. It's all recycled very efficiently without impact on water quality. You don't get any rancid water with bacterial processes that are prolonged, and then mould and stuff that builds up on boilies. You're not going to get that with a pellet that breaks down much fast, because the surface area of the particles in the pellet, the cereal particles, are such a huge surface area once it's broken down and suspended in the water, that it's broken down very, very efficiently, and you're not affecting water quality at all. And then all these particles settle back down to the lake bed, and it's gone into the food chain, whether it be carp or invertebrates or silvers that eat it. It's all going into the food chain and breaking down efficiently and promoting fertile water and productive water. And that's all stuff that we want. We want to encourage the fish that the lake bed's a place to feed, and we want to encourage the fish to graze the substrate and keep that substrate active. And with boilies, if you've got a single food item, they're going to pick that boilie up and they're going to move on, and they can get through that ration pretty quickly without actually creating much disturbance. And the disturbance is what we want. So that's another reason. The other argument as well is something that I guess it's something that you see in these forums quite a bit about preservatives. Preservatives in shelf life baits. Obviously, it's not storing freezer baits and fresh baits. You can't really store any volumes for supplementary feed-in, so you've got the option of shelf life, which preservatives going into as a supplementary food source, feeding preserved baits, I can't see any benefit to it, because I know there's a lot of argument that they're good or bad, and a lot of people say a lot of different things, and I'm open to everyone's opinions on that. But there's talks that perhaps some preservatives affect the digestive capabilities of carp, and how efficiently they can actually digest food. Some of these preservatives are said to affect how the fish's digestion. So that's a big red flag for me. It's a bit of a worry. And also for me, I think you want these mold inhibiting chemicals or preservatives, you don't want to be inhibiting bacterial processes, because the bacterial processes are what's recycling the nutrients in that feed, and the healthy recycling of any organic matter. Is you don't want to be inhibiting any sort of bacterial processes, in my opinion. But some of you might have better knowledge of preservatives than I do, and you might be able to tell me otherwise. But I do welcome all of your thoughts in the comments, so please do comment what you think and your opinion on what I've just said there. But for me, it's an expensive way to foul the water, isn't it, really, if you're feeding a lot of it as a food source. So yeah, for me, it's a product that I'll never make for a food source. A bait is a completely different thing. I think if you're feeding it as an angler, then yeah, it's absolutely fine. It's brilliant food, brilliant thing to use as a bait, isn't it? So yeah, nothing against boilies on that point, from that point of view, but for a food source, yeah, there's a reason why boilies aren't fed across the livestock industry to any other livestock. It's an expensive way to make feed, expensive way to feed any livestock. It's an expensive food source, so yeah, and you've got to be very careful with how it's breaking down and all the things I've suggested there. I'm just starting to repeat myself now, so I think I'll cut it there. But yeah, like I say, I go into this with an open mind, so any of you have got any opinions or disagree with anything I said, I welcome your thoughts in the comments, and hopefully we can get a good debate going on this subject.